and thank you for joining us. This is episode 59 with Jaze Uries. We'll start with a quick soundbite from Jaze.
I never thought I'd be in a place where I'm like, man, I own my music. And as much as it would be really nice if someone was like, hey, you want to jump on this thing with us? I don't know that we would readily accept that offer. And because as you said, contracts and things look really good in the moment. And let's just be honest, like we're artists. We're not paralegals or anything in that like realm or lawyers where it's like, oh nope, this article here, you're just like, no, that looks good, and signing away so many things. And a term I hear thrown around a lot is like owning your masters. And I was like, what does that even mean? And I don't know what that means, and that feels really good.
What does that mean?
That means that you have your real finished product in your hands on my computer, like on my hard drive. I own that. I don't have an MP3 or just access to a streaming platform of this song is in my hands. It's in our hands. And that feeling is like having that from the beginning. That's not something that I personally want to give to anybody else. Not at this point.
All right, welcome to another episode of Making It in Asheville. This is a podcast where you get to hear the stories behind some of your favorite artists and businesses here in town. Each episode, we interview a different local Ashevillean. We work to uncover how they're making it in Asheville, what they're making here in Asheville, and provide you with actionable insights from each conversation.
And we're your hosts. That was Sarah, and I am Tony. And we are a husband and wife team that moved to Asheville in May of 2019. Since then, we've set out to answer a single question. That question is, how does one make it in Asheville? And we've built this podcast in, the pursuit of that answer. We've interviewed business owners, artists, entrepreneurs, all sorts of businesses. We'll talk about one business quickly, and that is our sponsor, Range Urgent Care. We've had them as a guest on this show before. Sarah, what makes Range Urgent Care so cool and exciting for this community?
They are completely reimagining the way that traditional urgent care is done. So what that looks like is things like you can schedule your visit online so that you can show up at your appointment time.
Now, Sarah, if I schedule, am I still going to wait?
No. So the beautiful thing is that they took out all that boring, horrible wait time that you normally would have to wait. So it's great for, we say, non-emergency situations, things
but urgent.
But urgent, exactly. So things like you have a sore throat, or maybe you, twisted your ankle. It's not broken, but you just want to get it checked out. You don't want to have to go to the emergency room and go through that experience.
Now, Sarah, how expensive is it? It's got to be crazy expensive if there's no wait time.
No. So the great thing is that they have really transparent pricing so that you know exactly what you're going to be paying before you get any sort of care. So you can say, yes or no. But also they have subscriptions.
So what's a subscription look like? Is it annual subscription? Is it for families? Is it for individuals? Is it for businesses?
It's for everybody. So they have different subscription plans from basic, which being the lowest cost per month, all the way up to family and business plans. So if you want to get a plan for your small team of employees, you can absolutely do that.
Now, here's another question, Sarah. I have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Do I still be am I able to be a Range Urgent Care patient?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So it works with most major medical insurance plans. You can also pay out of pocket. We really think that they're doing some interesting stuff. We have an episode with them. We also have a very special offer that they're giving to you, our listener, which is the first month free in any annual subscription plan. For an individual, that's $30 a month. And that's really fantastic. So we have a bunch of information about it at makingitinasheville.com/range. Alternatively, you can go to rangeurgentcare.com and use Making It in Asheville as a coupon code when you check out. So thank you to our sponsor, Range Urgent Care. Now, episode 59. So there's a whole bunch of things. We recorded this episode with Jaze on the day that he publishes globally, internationally, worldwide, intergalactically, his new song called Touch from the band project group that he is, I guess, now a part of called Koyote. And it has been an earworm. We can't stop listening.
But I can still hear this song in my head. We were just listening to it. It's super catchy, great to dance around to, and
a little risque. So there is a clean version on Spotify and a loosely explicit version, very sensual, sexual, poppy, summery, electronic. It's fun. It's good.
Yeah. And Jaze is actually the first musician that we've had on the podcast. So we're really, really excited to sort of break into that genre and hear his story of becoming a musician, which I would say is, I don't want to say untraditional, but he didn't have as much classical training, at least initially, as, I think people associate musicians having. He learned through going to gospel choir and like playing drums as a kid and really feeling his way through it.
Yeah, and that took him to New York's New School. He traveled and has toured with bands, and this is, according to our conversation, his first real project where he is the front and the heart of the band, of the music. His collaborator in town's name's Ted. Hear a lot about their relationship, their synergies, which I find really inspiring and exciting. There's a lot about this conversation that struck me as powerful and transferable. But the one kind of word that I was left with after our conversation is the sense of intentionality. I think Jaze really communicated this deep sense of intention with everything that he does. He's not just a musician, he's a photographer. He seems to be like a true artist, constantly thinking about the intention and the purpose and the reason for each photo that he captures and song that he intends to put out with Koyote and any other projects that come down the road. Very excited to share that, and largely because I don't identify necessarily as an artist. I'm always so fascinated by the artist brain, and this conversation is a great example of speaking with a artist, a true artist.
Yeah, so we're about to dive in. Quick note, know that you can always check out our show notes page at makingitinashville.com/059. Mm-hmm. You can get all the links, you can get connected with Jaze and all his projects there and everything else that we mentioned in the episode.
Perfect. And so without further ado, please enjoy episode 59 with Jaze Uries. Enjoy. Introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world today.
Okay. So my name is Jaze Uries. This is what I'm known by at this point. I guess I have a good bit going on these days, but the thing that's at the forefront today primarily is releasing some new music with a longtime friend of mine. And yeah, it just went live today. So with everything else that's going on, this has been added on top. A lot of stress and whatnot, but I'm really excited.
Yeah. And we're excited as well. So this is in the future when the listener is listening. But Friday
today's the 5th?
Friday, June 5th?
Yeah.
Holy
June
smokes.
okay. So I say Friday.
No, this is perfect. No, I mean, we're just, but Friday, June 5th, you're publishing a song, not a EP, but a record onto the World Wide Web. Also, the world is on fire, which is like a very interesting time and place. But we've listened to your song, and it was a little bit of a dance party in our tiny little apartment. So we're excited to help support and get ears and eyes on your Spotify account and on whatever other channels we can get to.
Well, I'm sure that we'll maybe try to play a clip of the song during the podcast if you'll allow us.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Could you describe a little bit the style of music that you produce?
Yeah, so with this particular makeup, it's very pop driven and pop oriented. We both play a, a lot of different genres of music, but this we in the tour we toured together. Me and Ted Marks, who is my partner in crime in this, we toured together for a minute, and so most of during the driving, we sat in the front seat
Mhm.
together and we just listened to like Taylor Swift and yeah, I'm not ashamed.
There's great songs. There's a reason. So, what is the name of your project or your band, or what is it? What would people be looking at?
Two Coyote T U, but I don't know the
Yeah, what
but yeah, the
umlau
little the
maybe something.
yeah,
Two
yeah,
dots. Two dots.
yeah. Yeah, we was trying to be creative. But yeah.
Cool.
So two Coyote with a K. Coyote with a
Cool.
K. Yeah.
What does that mean? Does it have a significance or?
We went back and forth so much that that's kind of where we landed. So the two ended up coming from Ted's first initial and then my last initial from Uries.
Ah,
And
okay.
so it just happened to be perfect because there's two of us and we wanted to play on like that sort of duality because we work very, very, very well together. And so we
Mhm.
wanted to reflect that in our name in a sense. Now the coyote part, I'll get back with you on that. It was just super random, and I think like aesthetically is pleasing, and I mean I like coyotes. They're really
Yeah.
really interesting.
They say that the hard like C hard K sound is also like the best English sound, and when you
Oh,
can use that in business names or use it anywhere you can if you want your name to be remembered is what I've heard. So hard Ks
nice.
and transitioning from the C to K, that's cool. So
Well, we did it on accident.
it's
It's perfect.
it is perfect. And so it's got Taylor Swift influence.
Yeah.
It's electron. It sounds like there was a lot of electronic
Oh
beats
yeah.
generated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, and just kind of like a secret, the drums are all live. The drums and bass are live instruments,
Yeah.
but they are very much influenced by like the floor on the floor, dancey vibe. Electronic music
Hmm.
has, that really heavy and uh I would say like kind of soul and jazz in a sense, just in the way we think about music.
Hmm.
And I went to school for jazz and grew up doing gospel stuff. So that's kind of really hardwired into me musically. So those different things find their way
Yeah.
into what we're doing. And this track, I think specifically had a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say it's like summer anthemic, like get your body to move, and it's like ooh, I want to invite Sarah over. We live together, but like Sarah,
Yeah,
I want to
yeah,
invite you over.
yeah. I want you to come over to my living room.
Come to the
Yeah,
corner of
come
the
to this
space.
corner. No, that's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's we didn't foresee it kind of being such a like. Yeah, when you mentioned that, that made me really excited because we
Yeah.
didn't see it being like a summer like vibe banger, but someone said it and then you said it, and I was like, you know what, Ted? I think we yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy with it landing there for sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were trained in like jazz as the background, and I don't know if you said gospel, but I heard gospel.
Hmm.
Maybe we start. What was young jazz into? Like, when did you get into music? Is mute because in like the pre-conversation, there's more than music. Like
Yeah.
you are more than music. So like, how did your relationship with art begin? Um, I know that you're the vocalist on this song. Have you
Yeah.
always been the vocalist? Like, let's go back.
Yeah. So take you to 1989.
The year I was
no,
born.
oh, nice. I was 3 years old.
Wow.
That's when I really started banging around on things. So says my mother. And then about 5 years old is when I really began to play drum kit.
Cool.
And yeah, it's funny. I've never been like great at a young age, but I guess I just had like a little bit of like, well, a decent amount of the baseline talent and proceeded through that, growing up through, I would say when I was about 16, maybe 16, 17 is when I really started to look at other styles of music because I grew up so church oriented. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm sorry, I skipped a large chunk of my life. So when I was 5 and I was playing in church, my mom was a choir director. She was always on to me when I was playing, and like with timing and consistency, like don't speed up, don't slow down. And so that's where I kind of really got my relationship with this timing and rhythm,
Yeah.
was like that. And gospel music is extremely cutthroat. It's a very competitive genre of playing. And so I have cousins who have done really great things in the gospel music industry that are quite well known and successful, and a few of them are still doing like a lot of big things today. But having all of those things sort of be what I looked to in the sense of like talent and
Mm.
success kind of drove me to really try to be really great at it. And so moving on, playing in church, I wasn't the best drummer, so I didn't always get to do the most fun things with all of that stuff. But I kind of just persevered, and I've always just kept my head down and studied and practiced things like
Yeah.
that.
Did
Yeah.
you?
Did you have any formal training, or did you just teach yourself and learn through gospel practice?
Yeah, so at this point, there was one drummer that I watched all the time that played. He was like talented, but as a result, I picked up a lot of his bad habits. Um, and so at that point, like, and up until I went to school later, I didn't take any lessons. It was just all kind of like natural talent, listening
Mm-hmm.
to people, kind of
Yeah.
watching some things. Yeah.
So there are so I grew up playing the piano, and the way that I learned was very much like formal education, like reading the notes and like,
Uh-huh.
you know, I had to visually see it. I couldn't just sit down and
Mm.
just play a song. That's just not how my brain worked, I guess. How would you describe the way that you learn? Like, do you just sort of, can you hear something and then just sort of play it back, or are you more of a, I got to read the notes, I got to like, not notes, but I guess
Yeah.
with percussion, but
Yeah, no, it's notes. Yeah, for
I mean
sure.
the like
Yeah.
beats. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, because I kind of had to visualize things mentally and not seeing them in front of me, I never really started with that, with the classical approach, so to speak.
Yeah.
I did take piano when I was younger, which was cool, like melodically and harmonically, but with as far as like rhythm, it it was just something that I could just feel,
Mm.
and I could hear it, and then I could translate it internally, and then just sort of replicate those sort of things, or replicate it in the way that I figured I could play it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I didn't really get into reading music until I went to, well, it was my second college. I went to the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music in New York, and I was there a year, and that was when I really like had to sit down with just seeing what I'm playing like on paper,
Yeah.
and that was different.
And where, just for mentally kind of walking through the story with you, where did you grow up? Were you from North Carolina?
No, so I'm originally from Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
That's where I was born and raised. Yeah, like my entire youth was spent there, and it's interesting for me because my mom is like kind of an adopted New Yorker in a sense. She lived there for over 20 years, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, my cousins were all there, so I was, raised in the South by New Yorkers in a sense.
So we have I grew up in New Jersey. Sarah had she's from Atlanta, grew up in Atlanta.
Mm.
And our, I guess, official love story started in Brooklyn, New York. And so
Oh,
you say the new
Brooklyn.
school, like
Yeah.
some of our first dates were in that area. So
Yeah.
we're with you on that. And I think that's an interesting dynamic to be, a New York transplant in the South. I can't imagine in the early 90s or late 80s how different things would be. I feel, at least in Asheville, I look around, I'm like, this is kind of like, there's Brooklyn vibes here. I feel like we're not the
Yeah.
only people to have left Brooklyn
Right. Yeah.
and come to Asheville.
For sure.
And I just have to imagine that it was much, the difference from being someone grew up in Greenville, goes to New York, is different than someone who lived a couple of years in New York and comes to Greenville or
Oh
Asheville
yeah.
today. Um, I also imagine that I'm visually thinking of the movie Whiplash with I can't think of that actor's name,
Yeah.
but like are you pushing or are you
Yeah.
dragging? Are you pushing or are you dragging? And I imagine like
Yeah.
how different music school might be from just playing music and having a skill in music. So what was that first year in New York like?
Well, fortunately for me, I'd spent a countless amount of time there visiting family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, however, you go into like the dynamic that is music school, and you know, I felt prepared because again, how I grew up with things being so competitive, getting to school, and I have a lot of opinions about music school, but getting there and seeing just how competitive things are, um, but in a different way that I didn't really care for very much, but it was a lot of like some of the whiplash elements where there are kids that would be in the practice rooms just hours and hours and hours a day, and I can't read, so I'm like, I'm not sitting in this room looking at this piece of paper for 8 hours. So I I just I look and see what I could see, and I would play what I could play. And I didn't really push myself as hard as a lot of the people around me were, because I wouldn't say I had success, but I'd already done some things and
Mm-hmm.
seen some things, and so I didn't feel like I needed to push myself as hard to please some of these people over me. There are, of course, some opportunities that I didn't get to experience because of how the school system is arranged and set up, in the way of they want you to be able to like be technical and read, but also you have to maintain some sort of talent. And I saw a little bit more of one than the other, to be honest. And so it made me not want to push as hard as some of the other people, or like really take Professor so and so's opinion to heart as much as maybe some of the other people, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like especially with art, it's so open to interpretation. It's not like a math class where you get it wrong. It's like it's wrong, like it's
Yeah.
not right, and like there's no other way around it. But with art, it's taking a someone else's opinion, whether it's a professor or not.
Mm-hmm.
You can take it or leave it, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you like what you're making, then that's kind of what matters. I mean, maybe that's a
Yeah.
wrong opinion. I don't know, but
Nah, I think that's really accurate. I
yeah.
felt that a lot, in that, like you said, art is what it is, and you can't. I don't personally feel like you can teach art. That is born out of experience, and I mean, essentially experience, and you just can't teach somebody experience. You can set up guidelines so maybe someone doesn't make the same mistakes, or maybe kind of fast track some things, but
Yeah.
as far as like trying to teach art, I don't know, I can't comprehend that
Yeah,
really.
there's a quote that's stuck out with us from Naval Ravikant, who says that everything can be learned, but not everything can be taught. And I like that stands out to me, because I think of you as a young person, like watching the drummer and picking up and I think of I played sports, and so we would swing like Ken Griffey, because that's who you would watch. And so everyone had these terrible swings that were like home run swings.
Yeah.
But no one was teaching that, but it's something that's able to be learned. And I always say that I'm a struggling artist who's never attempted any form of art, but always admired it from afar. And so I see artists, and I'm with you on the fact that in a lot of ways there are, let's say, there could be rules. Knowing them, let's call it helpful, but I don't think that. And so I'm talking on myself on circles. But then we just had this episode with Sarah Jane Case around the Enneagram, and I'm now starting to think and it also depends on who you are and how you're hardwired, because Sarah's starting to think that she's a 6 in the Enneagram, which means give me rules, and
Yeah.
I want to achieve based on rules. And I'm if it's not fun, I'm not gonna do it. And so like if you put me in like a high stakes band, it needs to also be fun. If the coach, instructor, conductor is a jerk, I'm out. Not fun.
I agree.
Peace.
I would be the one that's like, I would take everything that the professor says to heart and want to be good and do it right.
I feel you. Yeah, I definitely share a little bit of both of those, especially like getting a hard gig. You get a hard gig, and I can't think of one specifically, but I can think of like the feeling around. Okay, I got to show up, did all my homework, charted out some things so that I can remember rhythms. And you go in, and it's like, cool, man, thanks for coming. And you're like, what does that mean? Do I come to the gig or not? But yeah. But I feel but also I enjoy the other side where you go in and they're like, it's super loose, not too loose, but it's loose and everyone's having a good time. And I like the middle of that. If it's loose and there's talent, that is just the ideal situation, and then makes performing just be able to go to that next level. Yeah, I feel both sides of that.
So tell us a little bit about after school. What did you do next in the music world?
So let me see. I left New School specifically because my kid came about, little Charles DDA, my little boy. I love him to death. And so I also, though, I wasn't really enjoying the atmosphere of being there, and I really couldn't visualize how it would truly help me with what I wanted to do. And so I stepped out and I stayed down. I actually went back to South Carolina, and I was there a few years. And at that time, I worked some jobs. I didn't really do anything musically that was notable, so to speak, but I just kept pushing, and I played a lot of local gigs, did that thing. And then I did jump on with a band that was doing fairly well, I feel. And they had worked with the producer out of Atlanta. He'd done some stuff with Outkast and a few other people. And they produced this album, which is honestly, it was the band called Stereo Reform. And the album was The Future Started Yesterday. I believe that's right.
It's a good title.
Yeah, it's actually a really good album. If you guys like some dancey stuff, dance a funk or rockatronic is what it was self-described as. And it did have every single one of those things. But two of the most amazing guys that I've met in my musical career, I still keep in constant contact with one of the guys, Will, and he actually is going to be playing on one of our upcoming tracks. But yeah, I did that with them before. I kind of figured that, I want to do something else. And then I got a call that is what landed me here in Asheville.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just because, we've now attempted to do as much research as we, when does photography show up? Has that happened the whole time? Because it, Vogue Italia,
right.
that's called a red herring. So how does photography and what other arts are showing up? Are you just constantly in art mode, create mode, or is that something that takes more intention or thought?
I guess I've always been a true artist to heart, especially visually. I went to college before New School. I went to Clemson for architectural engineering. And so I was always into design and interiors, decor, which, is very much influenced by art. People love their art pieces. And so I've loved photographs specifically since I was a kid. I used to go to my grandmother's house and she had all these old National Geographic magazines. And I just pull those out, and all the time I just flip through the pages. I never read a word of that stuff, but I looked at all of the pictures.
Oh my God, same. Yeah. I've never read a word of a magazine. I don't think once. I'm just pictures. Right. Send me the pictures and the headlines.
That's it. I feel the YouTube. Same. Yeah. So I did that. And I think that just followed me along for my entire life, just really enjoying great imagery. And That actually, after I was touring with the band that I moved to Asheville with, is I met someone who was really a catalyst for that. And just looking through my Instagram, she's just like, "You take amazing photos. Are these all with your iPhone?" I'm like, "Yeah, just on tour here and there." She's like, "You need to get a camera, like
Mm.
a camera." It just so happens I had bought a film camera about 5 years before then, 4 or 5 years, because I was still living in South Carolina at the time when I got it.
Mm.
But I bought it. It's crazy. Just scrolling eBay. I'm like, yeah, let me buy this film camera. And it came, and I was like, oh, cool. Then I put it on a shelf and then never touched it. So weird. And yeah, so she told me that, and we were on the phone, and it was near my birthday. And I was like, I'm going to go get some batteries for this thing. And I went and bought a lens that day and a roll of film. I started on film. And
Whoa.
yeah, and just jumped in.
And
Wow.
did you know like how like did you what's the word where you take the film and turn it into a photo?
Oh, developing.
Developing. Thank you. Did you know how? Did you develop your own photos, or did you just send it off to?
That is currently where I'm at now. It's funny. It took, I
Cool.
guess I've been shooting through 4 years, almost 4 years, 3.5 years now. And yeah, I just found a bunch of things that I don't know. I've always I leave a lot to the universe most of the time. I'm like, I don't want to push this. If this is how it's supposed to be, then da da da. So I always take in these signs, so to speak. And yeah, last week I was in a thrift store and I found a developing kit, and I thought, okay, it's time. And so that's my next venture here in the next few months, is to kind of dive into doing that thing. But back then, no, I was just taking it to, there's a local guy, really great dudes, and they do good work. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I just would have, I almost, to think that someone would start photography called 5 years ago and go with film as like, yeah, let me figure this out. Like that just seems hard. Like I don't know enough about photography but my assumption is like digital camera, ching, look at it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not in focus. You know, you only get however many exposures. I'm thinking I'm using the right word
Hmm.
on film. So it just
Yeah.
seems like higher stakes, and that's cool. It's badass.
Yeah. It's expensive to be bad at, that's for sure.
Mm,
So I definitely, I remember my first and only bad role, because I'm just that kind of like, I don't want to make the same mistakes twice. So
yeah.
I had a friend, and I had modeled for her for a few of her creative projects, and she was the current developer at this business I go to, and she's like, what are you shooting on, and what mode are you using? And I told her, I was like, well, this role, I was feeling good, I was gonna shoot manual. And she's like, well, don't do that, because none of these photos came out, and
Oh
they were all
no.
just awful and just underexposed or blurry or whatever. And but I I really appreciate the process that film is, and it does spill into a lot of different avenues of my life
Mm,
and just how I approach things. And film, like you said, you have 24 or 36 exposures, and that's what you get. And I it makes me like look at things really particularly when I shoot. Now I shoot digitally now. I don't shoot analog very much
mm,
these days unless I'm feeling really special. But yeah, I shoot digitally, and I'll sit and I'll tell like my models, I'm like, okay, so here's the deal. I shoot really slow compared to a lot of people that you probably work with. I'm not gonna sit there and click 1,000 photos. That's just not my style. And I'll just stare and look at something, and I'll move a little something, or I'll take a picture and see something and go and move that, make sure the lighting's right. And then once all of those things just really kind of all of my shoots do flow very similarly, in that they'll start that way, and then they'll just slowly move into this mode of where, okay, now everything is good, or this magic moment
mm.
just happened, and just capitalizing on those things. But I really feel like I owe that all to how I began and the film process.
Cool. And how did Vogue Italia happen?
I think that was by accident. Oh yeah, I remember the first picture. Yeah, I took these pictures with two friends of mine. We went on a hike, these two girls, and I took this really dope. They were pretty close, and so the one girl wasn't even going to come on this shoot, and we went into the woods, not far from Asheville, and just kind of like played around in the water and chill. And I was like, guys, you clearly are really good friends. Just do what you would do if I wasn't here. Just like hang out. And so they were just hanging out, and they're like really two awesome women. And I just happened to catch this moment that they were just like really looking at each other and like having this discussion. And that ended up being my first photo called Eve's. And yeah, it I submitted it to Vogue. I had another photographer friend that she's moved to New York now, but she lived here in Asheville, and I saw that she was submitting to the platform, and I thought, I'll give it a chance. I didn't have any expectation or any hopes for it, but yeah, they accepted that photo, and I was like, whoa, what? I got this picture picked up by Vogue. That's cool.
That's
And
cool.
then I just kind of like kept shooting and submitting, but trying to maintain the same thing around that. Like, if they like it, they like it. If they don't, I like it.
And how would you describe your style? I mean, I'm sure we're going to link to your photos so people can check them out, but is
Sure.
there a particular style that you tend to stick to, or does it vary?
It's funny because I've been told that, like, I see a photo and I know it's yours, and I'm like, well, that's a big compliment because I see a picture of mine sometimes, like, what was I doing? And so I would describe it. I shoot a lot of editorial type things and high fashion. I work with a lot of makers in the area. Kind of built some really good relationships, so I call on them and say, hey, I want to do this thing, but my I try to stay within the same tone with my photos, just overall, and just the aesthetic might shift just a bit, but I do try. I like, since I did begin shooting with film, a lot of my pictures still kind of retain that vibe. So it's kind of like high fashion film sort of like vibes. And I love I and I do love fashion just in general. So I really want the photo to say something, and a lot of that is just with style. And so styling things and just capturing like that editorial, like very like, intentional sort of look.
And that's mostly found on Jaze.
Yaze.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So we'll have links to that in the show
Okay.
notes. But I'm into it. Like we kind of geeked out on all of your Instagram channels,
Nice.
and then I found your song, and then I reached out about the song, and then we found out that it was coming out now,
Yeah.
and so I think, I guess, help us understand more about To Coyote. So, like, Ted is your partner in the band or in the project. How long have you been working together? How long has this song been? I guess
In the
in the
making?
making. Yeah,
Yeah.
and give us more about To Coyote. What's the plan?
Yeah. So yeah, oh goodness, we talked about this 2 years ago, I think, me and Ted, and we hang out in his home studio, and we're kind of working on this and that, and it just like, timing is a big factor with a lot of things with people. And so I know for me, it wasn't going to work then because it wasn't the right time. So then last year, I woke up and I was like, man, I need to hit Ted up. I need to an outlet, a different outlet that's still musical, because I'm just being a drummer of what, like 30 years now, maybe. Um, it's That's kind of what people have known me as. I've always kind of just been in the back in this kit, and then I started playing with people where I'm like, hey, I don't want to sit in the back, put me on the side. And then it was like that became kind of a push for some folks and created a little friction, which I don't really shy away from, but I also don't want that to be the main vibe musically. And so I was feeling so much of that pushback that I'm like, I feel like the universe is trying to lead me somewhere else. And so I woke up, I was like, man, me and Ted were making music. Let's just see what happens. And so it just works out. Last year, I think it was like fall sometime. We had been kind of seeing each other, and I pop in and he'd be gone, and I catch him when he's back. Same thing with me. And then finally, we we got to a good spot. Actually, he showed me this track. He showed me he had built this track, and he's like, "Man, check this out." And he played, and I was like, "Man, that's dope. I like this. What's the plan?" And he said, "Man, let's just play around with it. Let's just see what happens." And so we do for a little bit, and finally we were like, "All right, we need to make this a weekly thing." And so we start meeting up weekly, and we're working on this track all through the winter. And yeah, I think early this year we were just getting it and getting it, and finally, like, man, I think this is it. We got to put this out, but we have to do it right. And so was like the birth of countless conversations between me and him of all the things we wanted and didn't want in our lives, specifically musically too. And so we've always maintained that conversation throughout the creative process. And we'll just, I can also say that I've never worked with anyone professionally like I've worked with Ted, where I've heard other artists talk about it, and I'm like, I don't know, that seems too good to be true. But we can be sitting in the studio, and he'll say, "I want to do this thing," and he'll maybe go to look for whatever it is. But all the while, I'm like, "Yeah, okay, well, I'm gonna think about it." Then I'll think, and then I'll arrive at something mentally, and then he'll be like, "What if?" And it'll be exactly what I was thinking, like almost in tandem, just like right in time. And I'm like, "Man, this what?" The first time it happened, I remember we both just kind of like looked at each other like. And then it happened like 3 more times that night. And so that's just kind of, now it's just regular. And because we've been spending so much time together in this process, we went shopping yesterday and we were in the mall, and there was something that's so funny. He said, it was just another thing. He was talking, and I was like, "Man, it's crazy that this is happening in the mall now. This is and not in our work area." So he's always been a homie. Uh, would give you the shirt off his back. He's just one of the nicest people I know in a real way. And yeah, we just sat and worked with this and continued through the creative process. And it led us up to this point now where we were like, all right, well, we're going to release it and let's just see what happens. And I mean, I guess all of that took place just like over the course of, I guess, 8 months, 6, 7, 8 months.
And did you ever disagree about something when you were writing the music or the way that it should be?
That's the cool thing about me and Ted is we definitely will disagree about things, but it's not confrontational, but it's also not like in a way of like, well, I don't want to say anything to hurt your, it's just like, I don't know if I like that. And both of us, we definitely hold on to, we agreed when we started this, we said, first and foremost, we're going to put our all into it. And if it's not right, we're not going to do it. And secondly, we were just like, we got to agree to not be married to anything. And like, nothing can be like in stone. And, my mom would tell you my personality is I can be stubborn. I'm a Leo. So yeah. So there's like moments where I'm like, in life. But with Ted, he's such a nice dude. And I always know like where his intentions lie. And so I don't take anything personally. And the same with him. And we'll say, okay, well, that's not gonna work. Let's try to find something else. Let's figure it out.
Did you end up doing all? I don't know all of the right terms, but did you do all of the production, mixing, mastering, all of the things from taking the recorded sound and putting it into the final product?
Yeah. So we did every single piece of that except for mastering. I have to nod my head to Pat Keen mastering. I believe he's out of Portland, Maine. I believe. Cool dude. Well, I say that I haven't met him personally, but his work seems like he'd be a cool dude. And he just he did all of the mastering there. But Ted is an incredible, like, we both have really great ears, and together it's just great. But Ted, man, he'll hear something and I'm like, yeah, and he'll knows how to fix it. Or I can be like, man, you hear this, da 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 da, and he'll be like, oh yeah, we need to do this. And so he does all the mixing, and most, just about, I would say maybe 80-85% of everything that we do is done side by side, which is really cool. It's so if he's changing things, he's like, what do you think about this? And it's just back. But yeah, wrote the lyric. We co-wrote the lyrics of this song and the melody. Um, yeah, and we did it all here in Asheville, and
Amazing.
we'll continue to.
Love it. And because I'm constantly thinking about like the business model. Talk to me
Mhm.
or us. Sorry, talk to us about the like the plan or do you have a label? Is there someone that's repping you? I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of the music industry, but like, what's your strategy? What's the plan for the project?
Oh yeah, we have a very specific strategy, and I will. A lot of it is not completely done, and we're working on it. And
Mm-hmm.
so the plan, I could say, the plan is that as of right now, Jazz and Ted own just about all of everything in the music, and moving forward, that's what it's gonna always be. So we're doing a lot of research and snatching up domains and
Mm-hmm.
getting all of our business things in line because we this is what we want to do, not with just ourselves but with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're setting up a model to where, who knows, there maybe a record label eventually be born out of this, and publishing. And one of the things that I always wanted to do when I was a kid was do A&R, and I thought I had a great ear for hearing potential and talent, and that at this point is looking like something that could be very realistic. So
Cool. And just
yeah,
because acronyms are sometimes funny, I don't know what A&R means, but I think it means that you manage artists.
yeah. I want to say it's funny. I threw it out there like I was
Yeah,
like,
no, because
yeah, I want to
it's
do that.
it's just
But it's like,
it's an industry term, and maybe we don't need the exact like what do the letters mean, but
yeah.
it's the person, if I'm not mistaken, it's the person at the record label or studio or
Mhm.
whatever that is the relationship
Yeah.
finder of the bands,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, and they build on that, and they have a very important job. And sometimes, especially if it's like a garbage person, it could set some people up for failure.
mm-hmm,
And we've always Ted and we've always just been like, man, we know what it feels like to be treated like garbage. We've been on the road, we've done all that stuff, we've been in studios, engineers think they know everything and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, we never want to be those people. Like, who knows, the track picks up and then 3 days from now we're millionaires. We don't ever want to reflect bad on musician and artists, because we're at the forefront of so much in society, and it feels good, like in our community, to just be treated well, at least by one another. And
mm-hmm.
so, like, in going into that sort of a role, I've always just thought, it'd be nice to meet somebody who genuinely wants to help, who genuinely wants to do this or that. And so that's been like our idea behind everything that we're wanting to do and what we're trying to do. And so yeah, I've thought, A&R, that's something that I could be, as well as like having like other responsibilities, but just saying, hey, oh, I'm out of this bar, I heard this thing, this person, and be like, let me talk to them and see. But yeah, you're right. They're like the handshake between like artist and label.
That seems like a fun role. If nothing else, I agree with you, and I'm constantly. I have one of my best friends in the world, college best friend, is a musician, singer, songwriter, and I've always had, I say I'm like the struggling artist that's never done the art, and I'm always like, so I feel at least empathetic and like want to support artists and like wish that in some way or another, like they thought about their passion and like art as a business so that they were, I don't know, protected or not never going to be taken advantage of, and like wouldn't necessarily sign contracts that are going to put them at a disadvantage forever.
Yeah.
uh, and so when we had our pre-conversation, I was like, would we be able legally to like play any of your song? And you're like, no, 100%,
Yeah.
we own it. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, and that's like that's the way. Yeah, that's the idea. I never thought I'd be in a place where I'm like, man, I own my music. And as much as it would be really nice if someone was like, hey, you want to jump on this thing with us, I don't know that we would readily accept that offer.
Mm.
And because, as you said, contracts and things look really good in the moment. And and let's just be honest, like we're artists. We're not paralegals or anything in that like realm where or lawyers where it's like, oh no, no, this article here, you're just like, no, that looks good, that looks good, and you end up
Yeah.
signing away so many things. And a term I hear thrown around a lot is like owning your masters. I was like,
Mm.
what does that even mean? And I don't know what that means. And that feels really good.
What does that mean?
That means that you have your real finished product in your hands on my computer, like on my hard drive. I own that. I don't have an MP3 or just access to a streaming these days streaming platform of this song is in my hands. It's in
Mhm.
our hands. And that feeling is like having that from the beginning. That's not something that I personally want to give to anybody else. Not at this point. And I feel like Ted feels the same. I don't want to like speak for him, but we talked
Mhm.
so much about it that I feel he would agree. Like we want as much of all of this to just continue to be ours
Yeah.
because
It
no one
makes
wants to
sense.
start a business and then give it to somebody
Yeah. I mean,
unless you're
it's
trying to
like
sell it.
exactly. I mean, it just seems so common sense, and
Hmm.
it's crazy that that's not how historically it's been for musicians and artists. So
But I mean, that is, I think that's the point, and it's perhaps one of the gifts of this technological boom in the last, you call it
Hmm.
20 years, 10 years, 5 years, is that there were very real and like concrete gatekeepers. There were however many labels, and there weren't many, and there were however many A&R reps, and there weren't many, and you needed one of them to co-sign and say like that's our talent. But then if you get that and you do sign away your entire career, like they might not still put out your music, and they
Oh,
might put you in the cooler for a decade,
oh
and
man.
like you're just sitting there. And so like
Yeah.
it was the only way out, or
Hmm.
historically, and then it wasn't even a guarantee. And so today, you, though it's hard and it's its own, has its own like uphill struggles, like you could put a MP3 onto Spotify,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you have direct access to whatever billion listeners that Spotify gets,
Yeah.
and you could publish on YouTube, and that's a gift. It's also a challenge. There's more music out than perhaps ever before,
Oh yeah.
and there's no necessarily a filter. You can get like New Music Friday on Spotify.
Yeah.
It's like the closest thing, but like I
yeah.
don't know.
Oh,
It's so interesting.
Mhm.
what have you done in terms of a launch? Like, have you thought about launching this new song in a strategical way,
Mhm.
or what's the process of launching a song
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
as
terms of
well as
marketing, promotion?
yeah, yeah. I see what you mean. Like, I think for this, because again, we're artists and we're learning a lot of things. Well, we were trying to learn a lot of things in a small amount of time for launching this particular single, and we, self-admittedly, between both of us, we're like, we didn't do the best we could with it because there's a learning curve, of course, and we're taking on a few different roles that we don't intend to keep
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, and we want to build a team that really is just going to be like, all right, we just have it all set up essentially, and it's just going to be like start to finish, because we're wearing, we're both producers, and we're doing that, and I'm like focusing on, oh man, I don't want to talk too much today because I have to sing. I'm just kidding, I'm not that person. But but I am being mindful of like, I might want to do this or that, and so we have this process of the music is always first. That's
Yep.
number one, like that's got to be perfect. And with touch, we really didn't think about much of anything until it was time to think about launching. And I don't know how realistic it is to maintain that model, but I think we would like to. But now we have so many different wheels turning that the part of the process now is going to be finding the team, the right people, the right someone that knows the marketing that can,
Mm-hmm.
but never losing our creative control of it all, which, we still want, we'll own it and all that good stuff, but it's going to be more of a, all right guys, here's everything, do what you do, but still like under our umbrella.
Yeah.
That is, we'll call it to Coyote for now. And so that under
Yeah.
that thing, and that whole, like, just kind of having your camp, that where it gets thrown around, but it's a true thing. You know, you have like your camp, and everybody's there for the same reason. The intentions are right. Gonna be a good time, and then yeah, I think the ideal thing is just having so many things in line for the next single that it'll 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 already have a little sting behind it before it's even
Yeah.
Yeah.
reached
Well,
the
and
big
you'll
one.
have known what it was like to do it the first
Mm,
time, so that will kind
hmm.
of, I don't know, for us at least, it always sort of frees up that bandwidth because, or that mental ability to like take it to the next level and say, okay, I'm going to do this and then do that and add things on to make it better and better and better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes over analyzing and over strategizing the first launch
Yeah.
is a blocker in its own way. Whereas,
Hmm.
obsessing over the sound could be its own form of paralysis. But I support that over obsessing over the launch
Yes.
and not putting anything out. I think the goal is to flex the publish muscle, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if you can
Yeah.
consistently publish, like I think of the folks who are now mainstream who started with just like YouTube channels or
Hmm.
mixtapes, and because they weren't on a label, could put out 2 albums in a year,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's nuts. That's like insane production volume, right?
It is.
But it's like with most things, if you get more reps than the next guy,
Hmm.
you have a higher chance of eventually getting the skill down or growing the audience. There's a guy, Ryan Holiday. We read his books are great, let's say, but typically have stoic lessons in them.
Mm.
He wrote a book on how to write a perennial seller book, meaning the book is constantly being purchased. Um,
Uh,
and he says that the single best thing you can do as an author to sell your book is write your next book.
that's crazy. And I feel that a lot. It's
Yeah.
Like you want touch to get plays,
mhm.
put out touch 2, or the second
Yeah.
the second
Yeah,
single.
the sequel, which
Yeah.
is in the works. And it's funny you said that. I was talking to Ted on the phone this morning, and you know, it's a big day, and he's like, "Yeah, man, it's all here." Da 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 da. And I was like, "Yeah," and we both kind of at the same time were like, "All right, so about this next thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, that's where we want to live at. Is we're, we've started that process, and now because of where we are in the process of touch, we're like, all right, so this is what we can do with the next one to ensure that we have the same opportunity
Hmm.
or a better opportunity for this to be, you know, blah blah blah." But it is that thing with like writing that next book, and
Hmm.
we're honestly we're I think we're about 5 books out, to be honest. So touch is like
Awesome.
the the beginning of it all, and then we have the one that we're actively working on right at this moment, and then we have about 2 or 3 more tracks that are just kind of hanging out until we
Hmm.
get to them. And you know, they're great tracks. I have to honestly just say that I've never been so proud of work, it's my musical work, as
Hmm.
I have been lately with this project, and working with someone who closely like mirrors like my values, and in the way of, like you said, just obsessing over the music and everything. It can't be, we don't want anything to stick out to us
Right.
that is like, okay,
Yeah.
well, da, da, da. And so we move through it, and then we make this really awesome piece.
Do you have a particular process or creative process? Like, do you wake up in the morning and spend an hour writing or playing around with different sounds, or is it not methodical like that at all? I mean, how do you work creatively?
Yeah. Well, actually, I, I wrote a song, I guess it was about a few weeks ago, and I actually heard it in a dream, and I'd never that I've heard it, that happened before, but I've never just had to like, I don't know, I've never just been motivated to be like, I gotta get this down. And this particular day I was, and so I did it. And it took a little bit of, I needed to upgrade some stuff, which can be very like, it can just be such a barricade creatively if you can't, if your equipment can't do what you need it to do, at least
Yeah.
a little bit. So yeah, like I finally got to a place where I'd gotten some things replaced that really needed that, and I sat down and it was just so effortless, and I was able to get everything just kind of done and worked out. It may or may not be a two coyote thing, but that that is becoming more of my process in this all.
Mm.
Um, I've never sang before, so that's a very new thing. This
You
is
never
literally
know.
my first vocal performance,
Wow.
it publicly anyway. Like I sing around the house. My girlfriend hears me sing all the time, and she's like, I love it, and I'm like,
It's
I'm just playing around though,
that's
and
I would describe it as silky. Like it's just it's good. I asked, assuming that you've always been a vocalist. I
Mhm.
was like, were you sang on the song? And then my assumption was, after hearing yes, that you've clearly always been like the front man of the band. And then to find out that it was a drummer, I went to like Phil Collins. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah,
so you're singing and playing drums.
yeah,
That's hard to do. That seems
right.
hard. To find out that this is the first time you've ever uh, been the vocalist is just surprising.
Yeah. It's funny I called my mom. Well, I sent the song, the rough edit to my mom, and I was like, this is weird, but I'm gonna send her this song just because the subject matter. And she's just like, I love it. And I was like, really? And she's like, it only took you 30 years to start singing. So she gets so mad at me when I was a kid, and she would try to make me sing in church, and I was
Yeah.
extremely shy. And I was not about it. And so now it was really uncomfortable. I remember the first session, me and Ted were doing the vocal sessions. We had gotten the track to a good spot, and we're like, all right, we need to just step away from this, and we need to just do vocals for now. And I said, okay. And I'm like, man, I've never, and I told him, I was like, man, I never really sing in front of people. So
Yeah.
bear with me a little bit. I'm still kind of working on like being comfortable. And so I got more and more and more comfortable. And we've currently changed studio locations, and so we've upgraded. So, well, not we. Ted has upgraded a lot of equipment and put some time and money into it. And so
Mm-hmm.
we did a quick session a few days ago, and it was funny to me because I was like, oh, I'm way more comfortable. And just in hearing, when you're able to hear yourself in a really like clean and produced situation, which now we have this
Mm-hmm.
really amazing, just ideal for us setup. And he was talking to me, he's like, man, you're a good singer. He's like, but it's crazy. Like hearing you through that equipment, I could tell that it made you a better singer. And it's like, and then I was telling him, I was like, well, I've never done this. So I'm learning the wrong ways of how to sing and what not to push, or what like the mood of the room as it has to be for me. And these are
Wow.
things that we intend to carry into our performance also. Is we don't want this, we don't want lights like this, we don't want sounds like this, it's got to be this and that, so that in every situation, whether it's just like sitting in our whatever studio doing whatever out on a festival stage, kind of trying to carry that vibe
Yeah.
between those places.
Yeah. Do you intend on, I mean, I know right now it's a challenge because we're in the middle of the pandemic and concerts are not really happening, but do you intend to perform at a lot of concerts or create video concerts to share at some point?
Oh, for sure. This has kind of been a somewhat of a blessing in disguise, in that because of the COVID pandemic, we've had a lot of time to work together. And because we had already been um, seeing each other weekly, we just agreed, we'll maintain that working
Mhm.
relationship so that we can keep moving through this process. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were able to continue working through the pandemic side by side. And it, it just, yeah, it really, I don't know, it was such a helpful thing because it gave us time to think about the more of the future things, especially performances and
Yeah.
what that looked like. Some artists that I really love don't really perform, and I think that's really cool. Also, we do want to perform and tour, but only, again, it's very particular, only those right places. And yeah, yeah.
I, I love that. And I'd love to ask. about like the psychology. I'm saying psychology, maybe that's not the right word, but like of being the rhythm section, right? So
Uh-huh.
you're the heart of the song, is my understanding of what the drums are, and then this desire to front and to vocal
Hmm.
and be a vocalist, but um, you've been a model, you're used to, I'm assuming, used to performing. What makes it different, and what did you like go of or like conquer to finally step into the recording studio and have a mic pointed at your face instead of the kit?
Yeah. So I think all of those experiences collectively pushed me to this place where, sitting playing for artists I didn't necessarily want to play for, this music that I don't really have any emotional tie to. I got, I mean, the short of it is I got to a place where I was sick of helping everybody else realize their dream and not
Mm,
really focus on my own. And I didn't know my dream was to sing, but it's feeling more and more like something I'm supposed to do. And so I've been exploring it, but yeah, like sitting, playing drums and, being talented at that. I started learning that people didn't necessarily, and I could be wrong, but I felt I was like, people don't necessarily. I'm gonna let this bus pass. I felt that people don't necessarily believe, or not believe, but people don't. They don't think that they don't love me specifically. They love my talent, and
mm,
so I started feeling used. And there were some situations that came up pretty recently, um, that kind of happened out of like some personal life stuff, but ended up spilling into like my professional life stuff.
mm,
And then with some people I worked really closely with, there was like one particular thing that I can think of, and we kind of all went back and forth about some songwriting things, and it it honestly it hurt my feelings pretty deeply. It hurt. It made me question some friendships, and I got really mad about it. And I was like, man, what? Oh, and I just started thinking about all the years and years of like putting in all this work for people that in some instances gets taken for granted for sure. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to make the active decision to not be that guy anymore. And so I decided then that Jazz, Uries, he would still be a drummer, but that's not what you were going to know him as. And so I began to really, it just so happened that me and Ted were already working together. And I actually, the day that a lot of this stuff happened, I talked to Ted about it, and I was
mm.
so angry. And he was like, let's pour every bit of that into what we're doing right now. And that's what we
Wow.
did.
Wow. There, when the way that you talked through that made me think of a book called The War of Art by
Mm,
Stephen Pressfield. It's
mm,
fantastic about like overcoming the resistance that is stopping you from creating your art and pursuing like your truth. And he has a reference about Madonna, right? Like how Madonna's not always wearing like a bustier and like sexy pumps. She's
yeah,
planning her attack. Like that's
yeah.
what Madonna's doing. And so I heard you, and maybe I'm just pushing this on you, but I heard you kind of think of yourself as a character,
Hmm.
who's someone like will know in a certain way, a la Madonna isn't always thinking about Madonna, but when
Yeah,
she is, it's like very deliberate.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I That's been such a motif of my life lately is intention, and just really making sure that I know my intention and just focusing my energy into that, and just calling in all the things that I'm supposed to,
Mm,
but primarily making sure that the intention behind those things are to launch me to where I want to go. And so yeah, was when we were starting this project and talking through a lot of the early things and figuring out, like, intention did keep coming up. And I really, it's, again, well, I just love Ted. We're there at that same page, and we're like, all right, this is what we want. This is where it's going to be. And yeah, you're right. In a sense, I do think of myself as this character. And even now, I'm like, okay, eventually I'm going to have to get on a stage. I don't have to, but I am choosing to get on a stage.
Yeah.
And what is that going to look like for me? What, what do I want out of that? And I've never really wanted s- to my face essentially to be what to Coyote is, because that's just not. I've seen that model with some bands I've played with, and that's cool, but that's not what I want. That's not the dynamic I want musically. I don't want it to be like, oh, here I am. Where are my spotlights? Like, turn me up a little louder in the house, could you? Like, that's not my vibe at all. I want my stage vibe with who I'm working with, which is Ted, to just be like, we're just a couple of friends who happen to make some really good music, and people want to hear it. So let's just go play it really quick and then go home and eat.
I love it.
I like that a lot. I'm wondering too, is there a particular musician or artist that you look up to in particular, or maybe there's multiple, but what comes to mind when you think about inspiration?
Oh man, we're about to have a podcast part two. No, no, there are two people who really come to my mind very fast. The first guy is Questlove. He's just a musician's musician. I've always said if I could ever just meet Questlove, not in like a fan sense, just as like a homie hang and just
Yeah.
kick it. God, I couldn't just hang out with. I wouldn't want to talk about music with him for a day because that's just impossible. If you ever like follow anything he does on Instagram. During the pandemic, he did all of these live DJ sets just about every single day, and every single one was multiple hours long. Like, I'm
Wow.
talking like 3 to 4 hours of him playing one artist catalog.
Yes, Stevie
Oh,
Wonder one was insane, and
oh man,
Stevie Wonder
yeah.
calls like
I was like, yes,
he's like,
no,
what? I'm sorry, like what? I'm sorry,
yeah,
Mr. Wonder, whatever. Like
yeah,
that was so cool.
insane, man. That
Yeah,
dude is just like so. I
he's
mean,
he's he's a he's a encyclopedia too of
he
music
is,
history. It's
yeah,
incredible.
it is mind-boggling. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't have enough words at all. So I'll go to number two. But
Okay.
Quest, if you ever hear this, just
We're
find
gonna
me,
figure out how to get it.
man.
Love that. That's the magic wand answer. Get this to Questlove ASAP.
Questlove. For sure. And my second is definitely Steve Jordan, who he played, I don't want to say most notably, but John Mayer Trio. Actually, a lot of
Oh,
John Mayer records. Man, he's the drummer, and I don't know that I hadn't done enough homework to know if he produced any of the John Mayer stuff, but he's produced for countless people that you probably don't even know about. But he's another guy who's a musician's musician. He is an incredible drummer, and his, I don't know. I researched him a lot, and I just love like his story and like how he ended up doing what he does. But he's another dude that's just like super knowledgeable,
yeah.
just in the way of music, and also clearly the business side of things, because he's, I like to think he's fairly successful. And I mean, if anybody's getting John Mayer, as a lot of my close friends know, God, that's another one. I'm not ashamed of it. I love it. Body is a Wonderland.
Come on.
It's a lot of bad rap, and I'm like, man, just take it away from the music and just listen to those lyrics, man. And if you
I think
love
everyone's secret.
anybody,
I think
I know,
everyone secretly loves that song, whether they want to admit
I
it or
know.
not.
Okay,
But
all
he
right.
was,
Well,
and
I'm gonna go
he
on
was
record.
so young when he wrote
Yeah,
that. Like he was
Yeah.
so young. That was the beginning.
yeah,
I'm with you. So I wish I'll do some homework and learn about it. Because
yeah.
I've seen him a couple times. I've seen
Oh,
the Roots,
nice. Oh,
but
dog.
John, like I'm with you on John. Or if being adjacent to John Mayer's musical collection means that you're doing something not wrong. Like it's
Right.
you're very close to right, if not,
Yeah,
at the very least not wrong. That's awesome. I love
yeah,
those as inspiration and some homework
for
for me.
sure. And John Mayer, honestly, his as of late, his lyrical approach to things has really. I've always loved the music he writes, but I've really dove into like his words, and how he says things, and they've really influenced a lot of this process.
Wow.
And yeah, I was thinking the other day, I'm like, man, actually when we were doing touching, we were like, what is this song going to be about? And I was sitting back and I had really searched for everything. John Mayer's album, I had gone through, like, me and my girlfriend Casey, we have a very passionate relationship, and so there's always these ups and downs, and the ups are so high and the downs are really low. But I was really trying to channel a lot of those experiences with writing this stuff, and I was listening to the Search for Everything and realized, I was like, this is kind of like a breakup album. And I didn't realize it until I was kind of going through, like, one of our breakup, one of them. There's only been one. but I was like just really emotional and heartfelt. And it really, I don't know, it made me think about things a different kind of way. And he just really inspired and influenced me. It still does.
Yeah.
For sure.
I feel like I listened to that album when I broke up with my
Yeah.
college boyfriend or something.
Oh,
That rings a bell.
sure. Yeah, it's such a great album, man. That dude is just,
Yeah.
he's a killer player. I mean, if the Grateful Dead is letting him get on stage,
Exactly.
with them.
And one of the things that I've heard him say is, like, he thinks in terms of blues and like jazz and like very sophisticated like musicality, but he's like, damn it, I can only write pop songs. Do you know what I mean? And so he's like, so I have to play to the what's coming out.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And I also think that he, in the last, call it 2 years, has probably taken his own success to a whole new level, in so much as, like, he is more than ever a media company. Like, his Instagram, like his push on Instagram stories has been like prolific, and his like own, Sunday talk show that he came out with, insane. And all that points to is like owning your own brand and material in a way. And he's some sort of crazy outlier as far as I can tell, of like musical talent. And also, there's plenty of people who say that he's a bad person. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But I know that he has been in the public light for so long, and he doesn't seem insane. And like, he's failed and he's done good and he's done bad, but like, he is in the process, it seems to me, of like really owning his own creation. And that's cool. Like, he's playing 3-hour shows of just him. And that's that ownership thing that you're, call it at the other end, like early stages. But you're following in that same kind of process. It looks from the outside of like trying to be an owner of the art and the process and the brand. And that is exciting to see.
Yeah. I take that as a very huge compliment. We have a running joke that I was like, man, I only really want to get famous so that I can become best friends with John Mayer, because I know exactly what he'd want for his birthday. And so, but I do agree with you in the sense that he has set up his whole his whole presence, man. I feel like he truly lives as a human in his artistry, and the fame doesn't really, I don't know him personally either. I'd love to, but yeah, I mean, he could be a terrible person, but I feel like he doesn't like defend himself as if he has to, try to atone for anything. And I really appreciate just how raw and real he can be, and lyrically, and even just as a person, like watching him on his Instagram, he's funny. And
so funny.
Say some stuff, and I'm like, man, that's hilarious. And I can see why people probably don't like it.
But
I love it.
I do as well. I think he's probably matured, but
yeah, for sure.
From the outside in, it's where just a Monday morning quarterback. I have no idea what his world's like.
Right.
But I do find him particularly funny. One of the first times I realized how funny he was is like, there's a video of him on YouTube with Kanye West. And he's like, he does this cold open where he's like, yo, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. We got one of the baddest men in the game. and Kanye West here today, and like, you know what I mean? And it's just
Perfect.
like so not, uh,
That's yeah.
I didn't expect that, and I had no idea at the time. It was like 2010 or whatever, and he's with Kanye being funny.
Oh man, right. That's hilarious.
Yeah, John
Yeah.
Mayer. Well,
Yeah.
hard transition from John
Mm-hmm.
Mayer to what's 2020 looking like. So you've published a song,
Yes.
like
Yes.
on the rise to John Mayer type fame. Yeah, and clearly
Hopefully.
we're in unprecedented times, as though that's not been said a million times. But like, it's whatever plan you might have had for launch, it clearly is being modified. But what is
Mm-hmm.
a back half of 2020 have in store? What are you thinking?
Ideally, a lot less crazy.
Mm,
But yeah, I guess that's become tricky even in the past few days to answer, just because there's so much going on, just locally and nationally, obviously, and it's kind of presented this thing of, okay, well, yeah, what is this about? Like, where is this going? Like, what is, again, it's coming back to that, the intention behind all of this. And so essentially, I think it's become clear to me that this is a very, it's most people maybe will disagree, but I'm feeling like this is a perfect time for us to build our business and our brand, and to really have the space and the moment to focus in on that side of things, because the music industry is going to open back up, and it'll be a beautiful thing for us to already have all of our ducks in a row as far as like the two Coyote brand and music. And
hmm
so we're trying to like take as much positive as we can and use that to like push us forward, but also on the other hand be very much aware of what is going on around us, and our place and our part in all of those things. And and then being a visual artist as well, that sits in my brain, because I take photos, and I do always want my photos to say something. And so there's so much going on right now that needs to have it needs eyes on it, so to
hmm
speak. And so the I'm trying to take all of these things in account with, like, okay, moving, how are we going to July, we're in June, July, like August, whatever, and really trying to keep oh just keep our eye on, like, how, not how we're being perceived, but just how we're moving and shaking throughout this tricky time, because that says a lot. And again, I mean, I can't say, Ted is another one of those people where I could have a whole conversation with you about him, and he's just always on the same page. We're on the same page about so many things. And it to the music release was really like solid, and then it became a little tricky, because then we're like, well, man, I don't know what we should do. Like, do we need to like pause this? And he said, you of all people would have the best insight on this. And so we had a long conversation around it, and we decided to just everything for a reason. And we already put our stuff down, and we said, let's just roll with this. We know where our hearts are at,
hmm
and we can have our hearts here and in another space simultaneously, if it's true and genuine. And so that's what we've been doing, is focusing on that and knowing that everything else is going to fall into place. And yeah, we just want to continue pushing the brand, and more songs for sure. I'm hoping that, I don't know, the doing the touch, as we've jumped into this second song that's untitled. We just the process is even quicker now, so I imagine it's only going to be a lot faster. So we might release 4 or 5 more songs before the year is over, now that we've got everything, we've got it figured out a little bit.
Love it.
And we'll just keep growing that, and just remaining aware of like all the things socially going on. And I know, for me, as like a black man, especially in the South, I'm feeling a lot of this. And so it's I've been emotional a lot. And so I've been trying to be like in touch with that, but not act out of that. And so yeah, it's having this new business venture, so to speak, kind of like being in the front of my mind alongside all these other things. It's been a good place to like pour some frustration and be like, oh, you know what? I want a louder voice. I have a voice, but I want a louder voice. And how can I make my voice louder?
Yeah. You can, uh, I want to ask a question and you can answer this or not answer it, but what would you, with regards to everything that's going on socially right now with the Black Lives Matter, all this movement, protest, what would you want to say to our community, the people that are listening here, whether it's just a couple of phrases or a piece of advice or just a thought?
Uh, so there was a visual last night, and one girl said something very, very important. That's very specific to the Asheville community, and I do want to take a moment to say something directly because she said it, and she's like, essentially, we live in this town that likes to boast being progressive, and
Yeah.
I'm a pretty well educated person, and I'm also, because I work in the music industry, it's pretty hard to like sell me something that doesn't truly exist. I
Yeah.
don't think that truly exists here. I think it's dope. I think Asheville is a bubble. We have a lot of amazing things that happen throughout our community. Um, but when I talk to my Black and brown brothers, sisters, or whatever they identify as, when I'm talking to those people, we don't feel represented very well at all. There are committees on this and boards on that, and it's like, well, where are the Black people or the brown
Yeah.
people that could really show you that? I think they should really take a really hard look at that. I I like to think of Asheville as inclusive, and on the surface, it is, but like, and in a real way, it's not, and that's just how I feel about it. And if everything's linked, I am very reachable. So if anyone wants to have an open dialogue about this, I will talk and listen to anyone about anything. I will do that. But I do feel like Asheville as a whole, um, well, it's funny you said listeners. That's first. Just listen. Just listen.
Mm.
There's a lot of opinions flying around right now from people who really don't have a place to have an opinion. And I think that the listening, just listen and maybe just trust that what I'm saying it just might be accurate. If
Yeah.
I tell you my experience is this on this day all the time or whatever, just maybe think, you know what, that might be my experience, but it's true. Everyone's experience is true. It's your experience, but it doesn't
Yeah.
make it not accurate. And so I think that us not, continuing to come together, but a little bit more of the listening and a little bit more like true inclusion. I think Asheville will propel in a real way. I think a lot of change would happen very fast.
Yeah. There's a motto for my high school that was it's hard to say, it's Latin, but it's Siccissa Vericit. We'll
Mhm.
have it spelled in the show notes. Uh, but the idea is that like once cut down, it grows back stronger.
Mhm.
And that's just something that I've been holding on to in my heart. It's just that we can say pretty clearly that the country, the city, communities are feeling what it is to be cut down, and
Mhm.
I have faith that we'll grow back stronger because of it. I think that there's going to be more listening from us specifically, but then from people that look like us. Um, and my hope is that there will be more action, and that action brings us all together and gets us into a community that we're really proud of across the board.
Yeah. I really like that. I'm gonna adopt that. I like that a lot.
Okay, so we're going to move into what we call the speed round, but it's not really a speed round. It's just a few random questions. So don't worry. My
Okay.
first question for you is what is your favorite musical gadget, instrument? Leave it at
Didgeridoo.
that.
And if more points if it's got a fun name. Guitar is not a good winner, but it could be.
I
Well, it could be.
know. Ooh, I have one. It's
Mhm.
it's a percussive instrument. It's called a kashishi. And
Love
I
it.
think it's spelled Caxixi. It's Brazilian, if I'm correct.
Okay.
And it uses a drum. And you've probably heard a lot of Latin music, and you hear the percussion going and the shakers, and then you hear like that little, and it's it's so weird. It almost sounds like an animal, but
Yeah.
it's actually a drum that they rub a rag around on the inside, and however the science and physics or whatever, and the friction happens,
Yeah.
and it creates this almost a melodic tone in this hand drum. But that's one of my favorite instruments.
So I cannot wait to look that up. The thing that I've been like relatively new for me is the thing that people like play with their thumbs. It looks like a turtle shell.
Oh, you're talking about it'll come to me.
And it
Yep,
sounds
I
it
hear that.
sounds like unlike anything, like kind of like water drops in a cave or something. It's got like the craziest
Oh,
tone.
nice. I'm thinking
I don't
about
know.
something else. That's
It's like
interesting. I have to check that
they
out.
just play it like on their lap. It looks like a little turtle shell. I don't know, but that's my
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I have a friend that has a homie that builds those. Really great percussive guy in Greenville. Has all the things you could imagine, and he has one of those. And
wow.
I forget what he calls it, but
So we'll
they
have
are
the
really cool.
kashishi and the turtle shell linked in our show notes page. I have a question for you. Was there a song, like a single song, as a let's say young man, that you heard and you were like, I need to be in music forever because of this song?
Ooh, that's gonna take me a minute.
Or you know what I mean?
Uh,
Like where there was a moment where you're like, music. That's it.
mm-hmm. I would bet money it's probably a gospel song. And
Okay.
since with so much of my music
Mm-hmm.
relationship ties to there, I think the first one is called The Sun Is Gonna Shine After a While. And I cannot remember who the original performer of that song is. But if I heard it, I would know it. Oh, I'll have to look it up.
We
But
will
it
too.
is called The Sun is Gonna Shine After a While.
If that, I
Yeah.
mean, I can't imagine what the song, I can guess what the song's about, but it feels like that's a hopeful song and the
Yeah.
sun is going to shine after a while. Man, dang. Okay. Sarah, next up, speed round.
I'm going to jump to our last question, which is if we had a magic wand or someone in our audience had a magic wand, what one thing would you wish for right now?
Goodness.
Could be Questlove. Just
I
saying.
know. Yep. No. What would I wish for? Man, I would just wish for just like I don't know, complete understanding among individuals. I think that would that because that transcends into a lot of different places, and I think that would
Yeah.
be really nice.
Hmm.
It's nothing like feeling misunderstood, but I think if you can like understand your partner beside you, it's just like cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. And one of the things that stands out for me is like understanding does not necessarily mean agreement.
Right.
And I think that is what's being lost. It's like people aren't even trying to understand because they just assume that they don't agree. And that's not a good place to start from. It's just like a bad place to start.
I agree. I definitely. Yeah.
All right. Well, I love that as a wish, empathy, compassion, understanding, all in.
Mm-hmm.
With that, the last is we're going to have this all linked, but how would people connect with you on the World Wide Web, digitally, Spotify, Instagram, whatever is important to you? Shout
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, all music platforms for sure for listening. If you want to reach me, I post a decent amount. My Instagram at strong magnum opus, all one word. Also DJ under that name. So you can find me there. You can find me on Facebook. Same thing, strong magnum opus. Yeah, just shoot me a message if you want to find me there. Yeah, follow all that stuff. And
Awesome.
Coyote also lives on those same platforms.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jazz.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
And that was episode 59 with Jazz Uries, the artist, photographer, musician, singer. And we are just honored to share his story and be a part of this new song's launch and the future of the Two Coyote project. As it grows, we will continue to support and champion Jaze and all of his music. But please, please, please stick around to the end of this episode, because Jaze gave us the go-ahead on playing the song. So if you haven't heard it, you're thinking about it, what's it going to sound like, stick around.
And of course, if there's something you heard in the episode, you want to get connected with Jaze and all of his projects, we have all the links available on makingitinashville.com/059.
And if you liked this episode, please let us know. You would do that by leaving a review. We have links to it in the show notes page. We have links to it on most every podcast player. Please leave a 5-star review, a quick comment to let us know that this podcast and the stories we get to tell about the community, the artists and entrepreneurs in town, are meaningful to you, that helps their story get heard. And for that, we're grateful.
Huge thanks to our sponsors of this season and this episode, Range Urgent Care. Range is completely reimagining the way that traditional urgent care is being done, with things like transparent pricing, the ability to schedule your visit so you can avoid pretty much any wait time at all before you go in, as well as subscription memberships where you can pay a certain amount every month and get a certain number of access throughout the year at a very, very affordable rate. We have a very special offer for you that's just for Making It in Asheville listeners. You can get a free month of any annual subscription at Range Urgent Care simply by visiting makingitinashville.com/range. Alternatively, when you go to sign up for Range Urgent Care, you can either just tell them that we sent you or enter the code Making It in Asheville.
Perfect. Thank you. The other sponsor, technically, of this podcast is our own business. It's called Making It Creative. With Making It Creative, we work with businesses around Asheville, around the country, and across the world now on their marketing strategies, specifically with regards to driving sales. So what we want to do is work with businesses that have meaningful stories to tell, help tell those stories as powerfully as possible to build deep relationships with customers and have those customers willing, eager, excited to spend more and champion the business that we're working with, their brand. And so if that is exciting or interesting or novel, let's say even to you, please visit makingitcreative.com and you'll see more about our business and more about how we can get in touch.
Don't forget that we have upcoming events. You can always check those out at makingitinashville.com/events. Every month we have our Monday Maker Mixer, which is our social networking event. We get together with other local businesses here in Asheville. We share what we're in need of, what we can offer, and just generally what we're up to. So again, makingitinashville.com/events, as well as if you subscribe to our newsletter, you'll be the first to hear about upcoming events as well.
And our newsletter is really, I'd say, one of the primary focuses of our project. If you're on the newsletter, you get to hear about these episodes as they come out. You get to hear about events as they're announced, and you get to hear about any other projects that we're working on here at Making It in Asheville. One of those projects that you would have heard about if you were on our email list is we've just announced a t-shirt. That t-shirt says on it rather simply, doing okay-ish in Asheville. It is a quote from one of our podcast guests, Miles Alexander. It started as a joke then and has, I think, taken on a slightly more serious tone in our world. Our hope is that you are doing okay-ish in Asheville. It's been a really crazy run the last couple months. And so with this shirt, what we're doing is actually using it to make donations to the WYMCA here in Asheville. The WYMCA's expressed mission is to end racism and support women. Those are two things that we firmly can stand behind and proudly stand behind. And so if you visit makingitinashville.com or subscribe to our email list, we'll make it very easy for you to see that shirt and support that mission by wearing a shirt that's probably a little bit funny and probably a little dead on. Is that we're just all doing okay-ish right now. But with that, I just want to say we are always open to new podcast guests. If you or someone you know would like to be a podcast guest, please let us know. How should they do that, Sarah?
You can visit makingitinashville.com/podcast. We also welcome you to attend one of our Monday Maker Mixers events. We are held on the last Monday of the month because we'd love to meet you, love to hear your story, and just get to know you either virtually or in person.
Yeah. So thank you for making it all the way here to the cheap seats, to the very, very end of episode 59. And now, as the last thing that you'll hear in this episode, Touch by Koyote. Please enjoy, and we'll see you next week.
Sitting here, do I send this text just to be clear? It's not about the past or anything we had. Get you in these sheets, I've got to ask. Would you come through, do the things we used to do, just for the night? You by my side, just to lay between those thighs. You don't have to stay the night. I need you, I need your touch. Just wanna taste of your skin. Just tell me where to begin. From head to toe it won't end. I need you, I need your touch. Remember the time when we fell in love and I needed you, you needed me. Get you with me, she's when you taste so sweet, what you do to me. Would you come through, do the things they used to do? I need you, I need your touch. Just wanna taste of your skin. Just tell me where to begin. From head to toe it's rolling. I need you, I need your. Just wanna taste of your skin. Just tell me where to begin. From head to toe it's rolling. I need you, I need your. To be honest, baby, I hit you up just for your touch, and now you got me thinking what we had was just so real. Girl, you got me in my feels, got me thinking back with so much passion. But what happened?